I love the interior of the Z4. I think even after 20 years, it still looks good, but some things are starting to get worn out and it could use a little bit of improvement. This is what the interior of my car looks like currently after replacing a few things. I'm going to go into detail on what I did. One of the first things that I wanted to take care of was the center console. You can see it's scratched up and the brushed aluminum had just been getting a lot of dings and was starting to look faded. The plastic in the center console was especially getting rough. You can see just how many scrapes there are from people dropping stuff in there. So I started the process by just sanding the plastic to try to get rid of some of those scrapes. I started with sandpaper in the low hundreds and worked up to about 400. Next was removing all of the bolts that actually hold that polished aluminum trim onto the rest of the center console. There's a shockingly large number that you have to take out to actually get this thing out of there. And once it's removed, there's only a few more holding on this plastic piece. With the aluminum trim now removed, my plan is to prime it and paint it a satin black. I did the same sanding process on the small center plastic piece and the plastic piece around the shift trim. I then decided just to start spray painting it without putting on a primer first, which was a bad idea. It still looked pretty shit. You could still see all the scratches, so I went back and resanded it again and then primed it before putting on this SEM trim black. And it came out much nicer the second time. You could barely see any of the scratches, and this is what it looked like with everything reinstalled. Next, I wanted to fix the door handle trim. This is in even worse shape. Of course, you can buy new ones, but they're egregiously expensive at $50 a piece. So I decided I was going to wrap it in this carbon fiber vinyl wrap. The only things really needed for this are isopropyl alcohol, a heat gun, and an X-Acto knife. The preparation phase is probably the most important. Make sure you get it really clean so that it sticks nicely. I would also recommend doing this on a table that's covered in sawdust, so every time you use the heat gun, you're blowing sawdust everywhere. This is my first time trying to wrap anything in vinyl, and overall I think this is pretty easy. The one spot to be extra careful in is just around the corner to make sure that you don't have too much material built up so that it won't fit back onto the door handle when you're trying to reinstall it.
And lots of idle time for her inside of that town center. So this is where I thought I had the game won. I'm like, okay, I just won the game. Like, she's completely off the goal. She still doesn't have an army here. I have a TC here. She can't do anything.
Once you get the vinyl wrapped around the corner, you can hit it with a heat gun and it shrinks and tightens up the vinyl a little bit to get it to sit extra flush. So this is what it looked like when I was done. Overall, I was pretty impressed. And even with the added thickness of the vinyl wrap, it still fit back into place nicely. Only negative I can see is it kind of sounds funny when you rub it. The one thing I really like about this vinyl carbon fiber is compared to an actual sheet that I have here, you can kind of appreciate that carbon fiber has depth. I think this is a fairly good job of imitating that compared to a lot of other carbon fibers looking pretty flat. And here it is installed in the sunlight. Next, I found a great deal on these sports seats. They were only $1,000, $1,300 shipped with the obvious damage. However, they're fully functional, and my plan is to use them as is and eventually get them rewrapped. There's a company that sells the leather for these to get them reupholstered. Let me know in the comments what color you think I should go with. Actually, removing the seats is very straightforward. There are 2 bolts in the front and 2 bolts in the back. The bolt that holds the seatbelt to the seat frame is a little bit trickier to get to. What I discovered later that makes it way easier is actually just adjusting the seat to have it to the highest setting. That makes the bolt much more easily accessible. And here there's just a small torque screw that you need to remove to release the seatbelt. And underneath the connector to the seat, you can see it right here. And basically you just need to get in a small tool like this that separates the connector and then it pops right out. For the coupe, you will need to take the headrest off and have it oriented this way to get the seat out. I also had a moment of sheer panic that my car was leaking oil again, but I had actually just knocked my beer over. Getting the seat back in is just the reverse, and it was pretty easy to install by myself. The major reason I went with these seats, in addition to the style, is that I knew they were going to be compatible. I plugged the seat in, and it's working right away. Just after installing the passenger seat, I already love the way they look, and I think I made the right decision here. Same process for the driver's side. Also underneath here, I found so many used toothpicks, I considered selling the car. As the steering wheel gets in the way, the easiest way to do this is actually tilting the seat like this to get it in and out. And there you have it, 2 new seats that I absolutely love. Next up is doing something with where the emergency call and SOS buttons used to be. Since replacing the stereo, I have no use for this. In cars that didn't come with this, they had number 17, which is apparently an Oddman's tray. I'm all out of Oddman, so I'm going to do something different with this. I love a good button, so I picked one of these up off Amazon for 10 bucks. And what this button will do should be fairly self-explanatory.
Little red button on the bottom of the gun.
But before I get ahead of myself, the first step is 3D printing a piece that's going to fit in place where the buttons were. So I measured the existing plastic piece and then came up something in CAD that would fit in there. It's just trying to think of something a little more complex, but ultimately just decided on a small flat piece with the diameter of the button already cut out. Alright, so here's what I ended up with. This is the container that housed the original switches, and it simply comes out. The solution I went with, these are just 3D printed that have the same dimension as this. I actually went with 2 slightly different corner radiuses because I wasn't sure how to measure it exactly based off this. If anyone knows how to do that, let me know. I'm curious for next time. So these fit in here fairly nicely from the measurements. One of the corners are a bit too tight, but this one pretty much fits up perfect. And so this is what it's ultimately going to look like. It is very tight on the back side. The nut's actually stuck in there, so I'm just going to end up gluing this down. And then if I need to ever take this out, the nut's now kind of self-contained. It'll just come right out. And next up is just wiring it up. So the wiring is fairly straightforward. The red and the black basically control the power for the actual LED light. So the power is coming to the red, then the ground is the black. And the actual wiring of the switch itself, you have power coming in through the blue, and then to function as a normal switch, you're then just hooking up the green to a solenoid to whatever else you want to power. Then when you depress the button, the current will go through that. Going back into the rat's nest, that is the wiring for the amplifier, I'm going to be taking a power and ground from the connector that used to power the navigation DVD player. Alright, so we pulled number 3 out of here. If you haven't dealt with these before, they're actually numbered. So you can see 1 through 9 here, then on the back, 10 through 18. That's going to be the power, and then I'm going to take number 10 from this side, which will be the ground. And there you have it, a button that can do things. Let me know what you think in the comments. The only thing I have planned next is updating the center console trim. Let me know if you think it should be black or go for a touch of color. Thanks for watching.